Louise Banks is a university professor of linguistics who one day in her university class hears news through students and then through a news network. 12 ships landed on the surface of the Earth. An alarm was immediately sounded and the university was closed. Louise reaches home. The situation has reached an emergency, but Louise tries to distance herself from these events and calm her mother, who calls her. So far, no signs of attack or contact have been seen by these spaceships, but the whole world is talking about this issue and fear and anxiety have overcome the people. In the state of Montana, where the spaceship landed, it has become a form of quarantine. Colonel J.T. Weber from the Army comes looking for Louise, and because of Louise's history of cooperation with the Army in the past, he asks her to listen to the voice recorded from those creatures and tell what they are saying. But after hearing Louise tells him, it's necessary to hear their voices closely, but Colonel Weber can't do such a thing. That's why Louise tells them that they can go to another person. The colonel and his companions leave there. After a few days, at night, Colonel Weber goes to Louise's house with an Army helicopter and takes her to Montana and the ship's place along with Dr. Ian Donnelly, who is a physicist. Along the way, the colonel tells her that first of all they want to know what they want and where they come from and how they came here. The relationship between Ian and Louise is a bit challenging, but it's forming well. Each of them is bound by the fact that their field of activity is more important. When they get there, the first thing they do is take their blood and give them vaccinations to make sure they are healthy and stay healthy. After that, they meet Agent Halpern from the CIA. He is responsible for controlling the security part of this project. This survey is being done simultaneously all over the world and each center shares the information it has gained with the others. It's a precaution, otherwise they haven't received anything about this. Make ready to go inside the ship. When they reach the bottom of the ship, there's a corridor where the Earth's gravity doesn't affect it, and they have to walk on its wall. Finally, they enter a room with a glass screen in front of them. All the movements of space creatures are recorded by a video camera. They're coming. Creatures that have 7 legs. Louise gets scared and stressed, but she controls herself and tries to find a way to communicate with them with the voice that she had from the first encounter with them and recorded. So far, no other information. The bases haven't been obtained and there have been protests and riots from the other side of the world. In the next encounter, Louise takes a whiteboard with her and tries to communicate with them using written language this time, because she doesn't reach any results through their voices. The first word he writes is human and he says that he is human and asks them to say what they are. This way works and they display the written symbol on the glass screen in response, but with a strange language. This is progress, but Colonel Weber tells her that it will take a long time to teach them the language, but Louise tells him that at least this way they'll be sure what they're saying or there'll never be a way to understand. From the side of General Sheng, in China, unlike many countries, he considers the presence of astronauts as a threat and tries to convince other countries to attack them. The words that Louise has prepared to say to the aliens in the next presence are simple words like their own names, simple pronouns and verbs, and when Colonel Weber asks her why they have to say these useless words to them, Louise says that they want to finally ask them, what's their purpose on Earth? To do this, they need to make sure they know what the question is. That's a request for information with an answer, then they need to make sure they know the difference between singular and plural because we don't want to know why there's only one space here. Rather, we want to know why everyone came together, and the goal is formed by understanding the meaning of the intention, and we must understand whether they make a conscious decision. Or is their motivation so instinctive that they don't understand the question that starts with why? More importantly, we should teach them enough words to finally understand their answer. These talks are convincing enough for Colonel Weber to ask Louise to continue her work. In the next presence, Louise writes his name on the whiteboard, but in response to the sign that the alien shows, they think it's the same sign that the human showed when they wrote. Suddenly, Louise has an idea. She takes off her protective clothing because she thinks that they should see her completely to understand what she is saying. Louise puts her hand on the glass and the alien does the same, and this is considered an introduction for Louise. Then she shows them her name again and this time the alien shows a new symbol. Then Ian takes off his clothes and tells them his name. 2 space beings introduce themselves by showing signs. Ian suggests calling them Abbott and Costello, and Louise agrees. They return but Louise isn't well. She sees pictures of a girl she doesn't know who she is. They don't find anything dangerous with the tests they take on her, except she became tired. One of the soldiers who is there on the phone with his wife and want to make her calm and his family because of the fear that his family has about the danger from aliens. Louise tries to decipher the shapes that the aliens showed them, but she keeps seeing images of that girl. Heptapod, this is the name they gave to those creatures. Hepta means 7 and pod means foot. They have no information about them because they can only see them and listen to their voices. The chemical composition of their ship is unknown. No garbage. No fuel or radiation comes out of it. If the ships communicate with each other, they do so without being detected. No sound or light waves can be seen in the air inside the ship. Louise realized that there's no connection between what the heptapod says and what it writes. Unlike all written languages of humans, their written language is with signs and symbols. It carries meaning and doesn't express sound. Based on the studies of the Pakistan base, they realized that reverse of their thought, the lexicon isn't in time. Like a ship or their body, their language has no forward or backward direction. Linguists call this nonlinear spelling. Which makes the question arise that do they think like this? What's clear is that they need a lot of time to get to ask them the main question. The relationship between Louise and Ian has gotten better and better, and on the other hand, with the release of the first picture of heptapods in cyberspace, the country's situation has gotten bad and worse, and the pressure on the government and protests that why they aren't doing anything against these creatures. Again, Louise is deciphering and she hears the girl's voice again while she is asking her some words. She says that she is her own child. And these pictures are so real that they're memories of her own life. The images continue and she sees that the girl is getting cancer. Ian talks to her about a theory. That when you start learning another language, then the functioning of the brain changes, the Sapir-Whorf theory, the language a person speaks with determines his way of thinking and affects his whole attitude. Ian asks her, is she dreaming in their language? Louise says she may had 2 or 3 dreams, but she doesn't think that's the reason she can do it. At this moment, she is obviously talking to a heptapod that she thinks is inside the room. Tomorrow morning, Colonel Weber comes to her. He plays her a voice from General Chiang's phone call and he asks her to tell him what he is saying. She says that each of the 12 ships is trying to deliver advanced technology and their science team is trying to decipher the pieces and says something about the mole, king and flower. After that, Colonel Weber says that China prepared its forces a few hours ago, and now Russia is doing the same. Louise realizes that the mole, king, and flower are mahjong pieces, and guesses that they are used to talk to the heptapods. And in the game, they understand all the meaning of winning and losing, and this may make them think that they're going to attack them. The colonel asks her to ask them the main question, now is the time. This time, by deciphering the words she had previously taught to the heptapods, Louise asks the question she wants to ask them with the same symbols they use. The purpose of the heptapods on Earth? Halperin tells them that they should keep these things secret because the heptapods may intend to create differences between them so finally only one group remains. This speech of the heptapods caused a convulsion among people. While Louise isn't sure that, this is a declaration of war. China and Russia cut off their communication after the last meeting, and this order is also issued to the American base, although Louise believes, the connection should remain to know what to do, but her opinion has no effect, and after that the connection of all the bases in the world cut off. Louise and Ian try to get themselves back inside the ship and talk to the heptapods again. Their departure is uncoordinated. On the other hand, the same officer, who is afraid of the heptapods' attack, with the cooperation of his friend, plants a bomb in the cabin inside the ship. Louise asks them what they meant by providing weapons. And they say that giving the technology, and when Louise asks them to give the technology now, the heptapod hits the glass wall to make Louise go there. The heptapod puts his paw on the glass and Louise does the same. With this method, Louise can write in their language. After that, the 2 heptapods write a large number of signs and when the bomb is about to explode, she saves them by hitting the glass. After coming to her senses, Louise realizes that this base is likely to be evacuated and then attacked. The ship moves from the place it was in and is placed in a higher place so they no longer enter it. China and General Chiang give the astronauts 24 hours to leave China, otherwise they will attack militarily and ask the rest of the countries to take this position. Ian and Louise try to decipher the last message that the heptapod sent. Louise sees images of her daughter asking her about a word again. When she wakes up, Ian tells her that he noticed something about time in the last picture, and upon further investigation, a number that means 1/12. This means for Louise that they have to communicate with other bases in order to get the full concept. He tells these things to the commanders who are present at the base, but Halpern tells him that even now China is preparing to attack the ship and they can't change the opinion of the others about this. This opposition makes Louise decide to re-enter the ship herself, but she can't think of any way, considering the ship's rise and the hatch closing, but she reaches under the ship. A compartment separates from the ship and comes to the ground, and Louise enters it, and that compartment rises and enters the ship. This time, without a glass wall, she sees the heptapods up close. In a much larger size than she imagined. Heptapod tells Louise what she has to do with her weapon to communicate with the other bases. He says that they come to help humans, and 3,000 years later, they will need human help. And when she asks about the child she sees, she realizes that this is her own child and she can see the future, and with this weapon, she can open time. Louise comes out of the ship but is still in shock. She tells her daughter Hannah in the picture she sees from the future that the reason her father left was because he told her something about the future, that their daughter will get a rare disease that will cause her death. Different countries are preparing for a military attack, and the order to evacuate the American base has also come. Louise doesn't know how to communicate with other bases. But with the help of seeing the future, she realizes that she's going to teach the heptapod language in the future. She tries to tell this to Colonel Weber to prevent this, but he tells her that it's too late and there's nothing he can do. She sees the future again when General Chiang visits her at a party where all the heads of state are present and thanks her for calling him at the right time and dissuading him from carrying out the attack. Louise realizes that she needs to contact General Chiang. She gets back inside the base and calls him with Halpern's satellite phone and the number that General Chiang gives her in the future, but she doesn't know what to tell him, and General Chiang himself in Louise's ear. She says everything, and by saying these words to General Chiang, stop attacking, and this makes the rest of the countries also stop military attack, and the heptapods leave the ground from the other side of the ship. After that, Louise realizes that the person she is marrying is Ian, and in the future she sees that he is the father of her daughter Hannah.